control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you for listening in at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and on Revolution Radio as we welcome you to tonight's show, broadcasting out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin right here in the Great White North, live on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast every day of the week as we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial, conspiratorial, and so much more. Hey, if you like our theme music, you can thank the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we say hi, how are you? To everyone listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room, on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with your fans at Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, you know what? Honestly, it's time. What are you waiting for? It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, you can read up on our latest blogs. Check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. And we have a new feature on our website, the SOR Sightlines Report. It's right there for you. If you've had an experience you can't explain and you want it investigated by our researcher, Mike Schmidt, just fill out a Sightlines Report and we'll get back to you ASAP. And I know Mikey's listening in right now while he's fixing his vehicle. All information is 100% confidential. If you are a listener on the Double R Machine, Revolution Radio is the largest nonprofit radio station online today. Do us a favor. Visit freedomslips.com and donate today. As an experiencer of extraterrestrial contact, I can tell you point blank, life is more confusing than ever. And after each day, you expect those questions to go away. But guess what? They don't. I have more questions today than I did during my actual accounts during alien contact. It is something that we, as experiencers, all feel. But there's another side to this. There are those who show the symptoms but don't know if it's happening to them or not. Some think so. Others choose to ignore the obvious signs. This is why it's so important for all of us to be able to open up the discussion barriers on the topic of ET contact. Too many times these topics are ignored. Whether it's out of fear, ridicule, personal sanity, people just close the door on the memory closet and keep their experiences tucked deep inside. Leslie Mitchell-Clarke is making her second appearance on Spaced Out Radio tonight. She is one of Canada's top hypnotherapists when it comes to dealing with people with extraterrestrial experiences. Leslie's website, lightworkhypnosis.com, deals with all sorts of mental health issues, including anxiety, which makes me happy as a sufferer of the disease. But it's the work that Lesley does with contactees that she finds the most important of her roles, because we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to everyday people having extraordinary experiences. We welcome Lesley back to Spaced Out Radio. Good to have you back, my fellow Canadian friend.
Oh, Dave, it's such a pleasure to be here, and let me, before we go any further, just congratulate you on the incredible job that you're doing with Spaced Out Radio. As far as I'm concerned, this is the #1 broadcast, not only in Canada, but, throughout the inhabited regions of our globe. So I'm very, very proud that you are coming at us live from Canada, and you're doing amazing work, and, you have all of our gratitude and support, Dave, everyone in the community. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I got to tell you, I'm having goosebumps all over my body when you say that. I'm just not used to the compliments. I'm going to be honest with you. They've been far and few between my adult life. So to hear you say that, and someone of your stature who I absolutely adore and respect, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, bless you for saying that. Thank you so much. And I really hope that I can continue to live up to yours and our audience's expectations on a nightly basis.
I have no doubt of that, Dave. I have no doubt of that whatsoever, that this is really the beginning of, not exactly the beginning, you're into it, but you're on the trajectory of this apex of your career at exactly the time when it's needed by humanity. So your timing is perfect.
Excellent, because I'll tell you this, there's nothing more that I would do, and I love my daytime career. I really do. I have a lot of fun with it. But I could tell you this, if the door ever opened and I get the knock on the door and I open that door and it's somebody saying, hey, we need to talk, we want to bring Spaced Out Radio to prime time, I will literally say, see ya, to my other job. Yeah. ASAP. And unfortunately, the person I work for on a daily basis is probably one of the best human beings I have ever met in this lifetime. You don't expect a millionaire to be that grounded and that cordial of a person. But I'm very blessed, and you know what? But if the doorbell rings, I'm answering, man. I am totally answering, and I am gone.
All right. That's what I like to hear. And, I think, when you go through life's transitions, the universe has a way of setting things up for you so that perhaps, the transition you might predict it would be difficult leaving your current job and maybe have, mixed feelings about leaving your wonderful employer. Somehow, when you're on the path, the stars align and everything goes smoothly. And I'm sure that that's what's going to happen for you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But tonight's not about me. I'm going to deflect all this beautiful kudos that I'm receiving here, honestly. I'm going to deflect it because, you know what, tonight is all about you. And before we get started, I would love to spend a few minutes talking about a mentor of mine, Bob Mitchell. And I know he was like family to you, and Bob lost his life to pancreatic cancer about a month and a half ago. And you know what? This one was kind of a shock because Bob literally hit this field running on both feet. He wasn't walking. He wasn't crawling. He hit the ground running in this field after 40 years with the Toronto Star. He found his passion, like a lot of us do. He found his niche, and he wrote some incredible books. And in the short time I knew him, he was on Spaced Out Radio 5 times, and that's just in 2016. And I would love for you to tell people about the importance of Bob Mitchell in what you remember.
Well, one of the key things about Bob is he brought to the entire subject matter, ufology, the entire subject matter, he brought a tremendous amount of gravitas with him. Because as you mentioned, yes, he was a highly acknowledged journalist who wrote for the Toronto Star for many years, not only the true crime beat, but also sports. He was the author of a number of books, previous to his focus on ufology. But when he came into the subject matter, I think his established reputation, his lifelong reputation for truth and honesty, and almost a just the facts, ma'am, kind of an approach. He was journalistic in his approach, and I think that's probably more of that is probably what's needed to cross over into the mainstream media. And I have no doubt, and things were already going that way. Bob and his recent book with Jason Quitt and the one previous to that, these books were crossing over into mainstream. And I have no doubt that had he been able to stay with us here on the physical plane, that there would have been much more of that. And he would have been, and certainly was, one of the major players in ufology. And there's a huge hole. And again, we lost him so very quickly. I think it was less than a month before he passed that he called me on the phone and told me what he was facing, and also, to keep it to myself because he had not yet told his children. And even in this, although he may not have described himself as a spiritual person, he might not have used those particular words, there was a deep, deep spirituality to Bob Mitchell. And he faced his transition with dignity. He faced it on his terms. He did not engage in any unfortunate treatments that would not have extended his life, but only taken away the quality of the time that he had. And I admire him greatly and miss him terribly. And I'm not sure we have in Canada, and you will know more about this as far as what's going on in the West Coast, Dave. But on the Eastern Canada, we have really only one ufology conference, and I was very involved with it the first year, called Alien Cosmic Expo, and because of various political things which are not important, Bob essentially took it over from some very incompetent management, and he put together with Victor Vigiani, an amazing panel of guests, and I was so looking forward to working with him again at next year's convention, possibly with under the MUFON umbrella, and I just right now, I'm just feeling such a sense of loss. To be frank, I'm feeling at loss not only of my friend and somebody that I could talk to and collaborate with and run things by, but the loss to our community, and we've lost someone who was not someone to be marginalized, who would have had complete media attention in the mainstream media if only there had been, a bit more time, I think.
You know what shocked me about Bob was I had said that Ronald Murphy, our resident crypto guru around here, I said, we were talking, and I said, yeah, he's going to write my book. And Bob said, oh, damn it, Dave, you were on my list because I want your story. Yeah. And I was like, I can do that. And the one thing that I loved about Bob is him and I, even though we had never met, we had a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah.
Because I was a sports reporter in Vancouver.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Oh.
And when he did his short stint in sports in Toronto, well, we were able to banter back and forth names and, how's this guy doing? How's that guy doing?
Boy.
It was great. Like, we hit it off. And, Bob reminded me a lot of, I hate to put it this way, but an older version of myself, where we came from the same background. We both had experiences. We both were searching for answers. We knew that this was our calling. Yeah. And there are so few journalists who tackle this field of research. And I wish there would be more, because I think we would get more answers than what we are getting today. And
certainly.
And to have Bob all of a sudden, unfortunately, I hate to say it this way, just drop dead from this horrible disease of cancer, it's horrible. And you know what? I remember when I found out, I actually went on the air that night and I said, "Fuck cancer,"
Yeah.
I'm sick of this disease. And it opened up my eyes, and I kind of went off on a little rant about that because I was upset. I lost a mentor. And maybe it's the conspiracy side from doing this show way, way too much and seeing all the BS that's going on behind the scenes, but I'm a firm believer that out there somewhere is a cure for cancer, and it might be marijuana, it might be something else, but I think I always come back to the adage that healthy people do not make profitable people, and that sticks with me.
That's that's absolutely true, and certainly I'm of course if I'm from the States, I'm a New Yorker, and I can speak firsthand about the horrific travesty of non-social health care. I mean, that's perhaps not non-social health. You know what I mean? There is no real responsible health care. Obama did his best. He was fought in the Congress. He did his best, and certainly more people are insured, but it's still nothing like what we have. Poor women, when they go into labor, they go to the emergency room. They don't get prenatal care. Poor women don't get prenatal care, and essentially. And so, we have a whole system of travesty going on, and cancer is big business. It is big business. And I tend to agree with you, Dave, that I think everywhere on the planet is a cure for probably anything that can go wrong with us. And I hate to be a sort of a conspiracy theorist, but it may very well be that there are already revolutionary techniques for treating cancer, and we are just not privy to them in the same sense that I believe there's a parallel space program. There are elitist powers here that want to keep the masses uneducated and possibly reduce population. Who knows? But cancer has been around for a very long time. Certainly, I think some of the first written references to cancer occur in perhaps Greek literature, where the ancient Greeks referred to it as the white sickness, and I think they were probably talking about leukemia in that regard. But what is going on with the huge amounts of cancer that go on? I myself am a cancer survivor for many years, and I'm a very healthy person. So this is there's a lot. There's a multi-layered problem going on here, and I would hate to think that anything untoward had been directed toward Bob. I mean, I would prefer to think that for whatever reason, it was his time to transition. I would prefer to think that, but I still have a great feeling of unease, about his passing and the suddenness of his passing. And he was, he used to call me Cuz because we have the same last name. But in fact, Bob Mitchell was actually of Russian Jewish extraction, and I think that Mitchell was a name that was taken either at Ellis Island or wherever his family entered North America. But what a soulful, wonderful human being, and I have a feeling that he's helping us. He's still doing his good work, even in this higher vibrational realm in which he is now, in which he knows everything.
I fully agree with you. And Bob, if you're listening, which I know you are, I'm sure you got a big smile on your face and you're pretty humble up there. Thank you for the short time I got to know you, and you blessed us all. And it just wished you could have given us a lot more information, because that man was smart. And the way, one thing that impressed me with him was how quickly he got tapped in. Like it was bam, like all of a sudden he went from an absolute nobody in this field to one of the major players. He went from zero to the A-list right off the bat. There was no ifs, ands about it. If he wanted coast to coast, or if he wanted television time, by damned he got it. And it was great to watch.
Well, he was, not unlike myself, he had a kind of a duality going, because he did have a really excellent media relations service, the Toronto Newswire, and so he was very connected. He remained connected and respected with all media, whether it transitioned into television or whatever. And in fact, he's one of maybe the only person I can think of who was on mainstream news. He did get coverage during Alien Cosmic Expo. They didn't cover the panel of luminaries, of course not, but they did interview Bob, and I think it was the first time, I believe it was, forgive me if this is I believe it was CTV, for the first time, this type of coverage of ufology was treated with respect. And he was interviewed by the mainstream anchor person of the evening news. And I tell you, I don't know if that has. I don't even know if that's happened with Linda Moulton Howe. I don't remember ever seeing a major person in ufology interviewed on the evening news by an anchor person.
I saw that, and it was an incredible interview. And the one thing that I liked about the lady who did the interview, and I apologize for not remembering her name, but she let Bob speak.
She did.
And you know what? That is the benefit for our American listeners who don't understand, and you'll understand being from New York and now living in Toronto. Mm-hmm. The CBC, they take journalism on an old school fashion where they ask the question, they shut up. There's no cutting off. There's no abbreviated questions and then everything. They let you speak, and they let Bob speak in that. And that's what was impressive to me.
It was completely impressive. He wasn't reduced to a soundbite with some jokes about tinfoil hats. I mean, not what you would expect, and that was a total first. It really was. And I agree with you completely, Dave. The CBC, the BBC, we have a tradition here in Canada of legitimate journalism. And now in the States, if you're just looking at the random, channels, it looks like an ADD convention. I mean, nothing is covered. There's sound bites and loud music cues, and really, it doesn't bear much resemblance to what I would call legitimate journalism. So I feel very proud that Bob was secured that media opportunity and was treated with such respect, and bless his heart. I had a little dream about. I mean, it was such a vivid dream. It might have been a visitation, I'm not sure, but there was something I was mulling over in my career. It actually has to do with a book project, and I was frustrated about not being able to find time to focus on finishing up a book that I've been working on with Wes Roberts for a couple of years. And I dreamed about him, and it was so physical in this dream, and he looked wonderful, and he was smiling that big smile of his, and he said, "You go for it, cuz," because he used to call me cuz or cousin. "You go for it, cuz." And then it was over. But I really feel like he took the time to give me a message of encouragement. It was one of those kind of physical dreams that are sort of different, that you recall, sort of a psychophysical dream of some sort. But anyway, I believe he sent me a message of love and support, and I know that he loves and supports all of us, and I think we're going to get a lot of help from him in our work.
I hope so. I want to transition this now because I think it's time to move on, and Bob's going to tell us to shut up any time here from the other side. You know him as well. You know him better than I do, and that's pretty much what he will do.
We'd be he'd be waving us out. He'd be moving us along. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah, I can see him saying, "Shut up! Enough already. Let's just get on with it."
Absolutely.
But we have, literally, this is how Spaced Out Radio's audience breaks down. Our two major listeners are here in North America. 79% of our audience is in the United States. 11% is in Canada. We're trying to grow that Canadian market as we go here. And this leads into the question, because Bob was very passionate about trying to get this message across Canada, coast to coast to coast.
Yes.
And why do you think that the Canadian public and the Canadian media stays such an arm length away from anything to do with the paranormal umbrella?
You know, it has fascinated me in an otherwise open, multicultural type of scenario. You know, I wish that I had a clear answer for that. I've thought about it many times. Is it the Anglican majority? No, I don't think it's that. Is it censorship? Is it repression? I don't think it's that. We have a very open media that, you know, we can have nudity on TV. We have a very liberal situation, more European than it is North American, actually. The only thing that I can think of is it must come down to money. And we know very well that there are certain subject matters that they feel will drive advertising, and subject matters that they feel will not. Or perhaps the big networks are concerned that major advertisers will withdraw if this type of subject matter is discussed with any sort of any sort of legitimacy. Now, on the other hand, however, we have a plethora of metaphysically oriented shows that are all over the media. Ghost investigations, crypto investigations. Certainly, Ancient Aliens is going into its 11th season. So this tells me that that has got to be a bullshit concern that advertisers would pull out, because people are fascinated with arcane knowledge. They are fascinated with it. They may not admit it, but they'll be home watching, Giorgio Tsoukalos, as soon as they can. So this is a very interesting question, Dave, and I think possibly, again, just speaking briefly about Bob, a figurehead of legitimacy, such as, Paul Hellyer, figureheads of legitimacy are probably what is really needed to push this through the veil into the mainstream media. And certainly there's a lot of misunderstandings and negative information about experiencers. People are, as you well know, people are often even afraid to admit, even today, that they've had experiences or contacts because they're afraid that they'll be called crazy. And I can tell you, Dave, for the past, I suppose, 10 years, I've really been focusing on my work with experiencers in addition to the other types of hypnosis that I do. And it may surprise you, but most of the people who come to me with their experiences are really what I would call very legitimate members of the community. These are not fringe characters. I have university professors, there have been judges, there have been certainly people in politics, people working for the government in various situations, social workers. So most of the people coming to me are of high standing in the community, but again, they are very terrified of losing that status. So, everything that they do has to be pretty confidential. And then there are of course people in the experiencer community who have been damaged by their experiences in some way, and people have varying abilities to cope. And some experiencers are very fragile people. They have really a certain type of post-traumatic stress disorder. They can be paranoid, and so it's very easy for the mainstream psychiatric community to simply label these people as neurotic or something worse, without really listening to what they have to say.
Before we go any further, I do have to make mention that my audience in the chat rooms is going happily crazy that you use the word plethora, because because that is literally my favorite word ever.
Is it?
Yes. So anytime we get a plethora on this show, we absolutely, everybody lights up. Plethora, she said plethora. That's our favorite word. So it's pretty easy to get the Spaced Out Radio audience on your side. All you have to do is drop a plethora here or there, and you have them.
Okay.
You've won now. Like, we could end the show right now, and they're going to be like, oh, Leslie's so knowledgeable. She's so smart. She's one of us.
Well, I will make a note to include that word in all future appearances on Space Radio. And by the way, I am myself a space traveler. I love your listeners. I think you have the most intelligent listeners in the business, because I do read their comments, although I don't always, because it's a little bit late for an old broad like me here on the East Coast. So I don't always get to listen, but I certainly look at all the interesting comments and insights and experiences. And you have a marvelous group of people, aware, intelligent, insightful, who are constantly, contributing to the whole project.
You know what? We're blessed. I'm not going to lie. We are very, very blessed with a great audience. And, the one thing I love about them, and I've said this many times, and I have no problem bragging about them, is they ask some damn intelligent questions. They keep me on my toes every night, and they do not allow me, in a good way, to take a night off or to take a break, because they know when we come on this show, we're pushing hard. We got to get that message out, and they need the answers. And in the end, this show is about them. It isn't about me. It isn't about you, the guest. It's about them getting the answers to the experiences they are having. And I think that's what we're doing different compared to everybody else. And that's
I think you're absolutely right about that. That's where the focus is. The focus is not about you and a hairpiece and a part of me, but that's not what it's about at all. I couldn't agree more.
I want to continue with this Canada topic here for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind.
Please.
And while you were speaking about why maybe these subjects aren't taken as seriously up here, a couple things came to mind. We have, especially in media, a real inferiority complex up here compared to the United States. So we don't like to be trendsetters, even though we have with certain shows, especially in comedy and, of course, Hockey Night in Canada. But for anything else, we have this major inferiority complex that, this show would never work in Canada, even though it's getting, 11 million viewers a week in the United States, and it's got 3 million viewers up here in Canada. It'll never work if we do an episode like this here, or we don't want to spend the money. It seems like if it doesn't work in the U.S., it's not going to work in Canada. How much do you think that comes into play?
Oh, I think it comes into play terrifically. In fact, it was when I first moved here, which was some time ago now, like 17 years ago. It was what I would have to call the national inferiority complex. I thought, here are these wonderful, intelligent people, and they're completely obsessed with what their obnoxious big brother is doing. It was. I really had a very difficult time with it, but I think you really have hit the nail on the head. This is a kind of a Canadian characteristic, and I suppose just the numbers. Living. We're here in Canada. We're like the really nice family that lives above the biker bar. Apologies to any legitimate bikers out there. That's not what I mean. But we're sitting above chaos, essentially. And one of the reasons I think why we do comedy so well, SCTV, and the list goes on and on, all the great comedians, Martin Short, all the great comedians that have come out of here, is because Canada has an overview. I think that there is a unique, funny, insightful overview that is so special to Canada, and if only Canadians themselves would really understand it and realize it and embrace it. So yes, there's a national inferiority complex. Canadians are afraid to do something that won't be approved by Big Brother. I think that you really hit on something there.
the other question that I have for you in regards to these paranormal topics and them being kind of taboo in Canada here. Canada is becoming extremely multicultural, extremely fast. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, those who've been in Canada, say are third, fourth generation Canadians, maybe fifth now. Mm-hmm. They seem to be stepping away from religion and becoming more either agnostic or atheist. Do you think that because we have this big mishmash across the country of globalism combined with atheism, agnostic, people, because there is nothing really defined as Canadian anymore, that mm-hmm. may play a role in people's beliefs?
Well, I would have to say, in my experience, and I'm just talking about the cross-section of people that I see, even just for your basic garden variety hypnosis, I see people from every culture that you could imagine. And what I seem to find is, yes, there is a homogeny, right? There is exactly what you're talking about. However, people from other cultures have brought...
Well, we just lost Lesley. We will get her right back here. You're going to hear a dial tone here momentarily. Her phone just died. That's never any good. We're going to call her right back because that's kind of what we do around here. Maybe the CBC or the Canadian government didn't like us talking about us being so damn polite up here. Sometimes that's what happens. You're going to hear a dial tone here momentarily. Oh, we got a busy signal. We don't want a busy signal. No, we don't. So we're going to have to get everything back up and running here. Hopefully she's not trying to call in. One of those situations where you're calling them and they're calling you. I hope it's not one of those situations where it just kind of happened that way. It would be kind of crappy if it did. So, apparently... we're having some Skype issues now. So I'm going to just rattle on here for a little bit as we try and get everything going here. Once again, that's why I hate this Skype stuff. This is why we need to make this show absolutely 100% on terrestrial radio. This is a prime example right now. Oh, Leslie's calling my cell phone. 1 second. I'm going to put you on speaker so everybody can hear, okay?
Okay.
So what's happened here is my Skype seems to have gone down. So we're going to figure out a way to do this right now because I have that ability to do that. So
yes, you do.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go like relatively old school here right now while we try and figure out this Skype system here. And I'm actually going to plug you into my speakers. So now people should be able to hear you.
Hello?
There we go. Let's get some volume on this.
Okay.
There we go. We got you. We got you going now.
All right, Dave. So I'm on my mobile now. So if I run out of gas,
I'll call you. I'll call you on your main line. Not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's the way we do it. Let's rock.
Alrighty.
Let's rock and roll about this because the show must go on, and we are dealing with technical errors perfectly here. Perfectly. Like I was saying.
all kinds of stuff can happen when we're doing alternative broadcasting. I'm sure you probably noticed that. I have one, for my, obviously I don't do this extensive thing like you do anymore, but I have a little broadcast called Contactee, and we interview people. And Randy Kramer, or Captain K, who is one of my favorite guests, every time that we, try to pre-record him or go live or whatever, something like completely off the wall happens. Yeah. And he says, and Randy says, well, I'm just used to it because this happens all the time. Because, here's Randy Kramer again, a completely He's just so believable and so honest and so military in his in his recountings, and so believable, and his story is so mesmerizing, and that I'm sure that, if there are any powers that be that want to keep the message of what we're actually doing in the government with regards to a space program a secret, they're not going to be very happy with Randy Kramer, broadcasting internationally. But the good news is it can't be controlled. No one can control the internet or international broadcasting or alternative broadcasting. It absolutely cannot be controlled. So the message still gets out there, but invariably controversial people will have interferences going on with the technology.
Mm-hmm. It was the word plethora. That's what it was. It exploded everything. Even the alphabet groups who were listening to this show, they got all excited about the word plethora, much like the audience. And they went crazy and accidentally hit the cut button. That's exactly what it was.
That's what happened. But I think now, before we were so rudely interrupted, I think we were talking about, multi-ethnicity, and do I think how does spirituality figure into that? Maybe there is no spirituality. But, my experience has been that spirituality is getting stronger than it was, say, even a few years ago, that people are finding more common denominators. Contrary to what the news media would have you believe, with, various reflections of racism and cultural intolerance, that's not what I'm seeing in this world, in this this enlightened time that we're entering. I'm seeing people who are diverse, from diverse cultures, who are having a commonality of experience. And so, in a sense, I think that our diversity is a strength in every way, and even in the pursuit of ufology and arcane information. But one thing I did want to mention about legitimate media or mainstream media, and this again is, I'll put on my little publicist hat for just a moment. I have been, as a publicist, unable even to get top hypnotists who are authors. For instance, Dr. Georgina Cannon authored many books, leading, along with perhaps Barbara Lamb, the leading expert on regression and hypnotic processes. I was told at City TV, Breakfast TV specifically, that they would never cover anything to do with hypnotism. Now, hypnotism is 5,000 years old, or more, if you accept the idea of prehistory cultures, which I do. But I mean, just hypnotism they won't cover. And I find that astonishing, since of course big corporations hire people like me and neurolinguistic practitioners to help facilitate their ad campaigns. So on one hand, you have large corporations utilizing practitioners like myself who have chosen to work on the dark side, and yet, as far as any type of entertainment coverage or news coverage, even hypnotism is apparently verboten. So it's a paradox, isn't it, Dave?
It really is. And just so you know, we do have Skype up running again, but we're going to run with this until the top of the hour. And the people over on Revolution Radio who are listening in, they will be able to hear what is going on as well. So that's not a bad thing either. So we'll just continue like this because, well, it's working. And that's all that matters right now. All that matters. There are a lot of really strong players living in Canada in the field of ufology. You know, we have Jason Quitt, who's recently come out as a time traveler of sorts. We have Stanton Friedman, who has dual citizenship. Of course, he lives in Nova Scotia. Grant Cameron, Chris Rutkowski, the whole Shag Harbor incident, Paul Hellier, Okay, Miriam Delicato out here in British Columbia, where I actually live in the town where she was abducted in 1988, and yet I live in this town, literally there is 2,000 people. 2,000 people. And I can count on one hand how many regulars in this town who've been here a long time, say 25 plus years, who have never heard the story of Miriam Delicato. It's amazing.
That's incredible.
It's amazing how these stories are swept under the rug so quickly. Or I believe it's what's the town I'm looking for in Alberta, where in 1967, they built a landing pad for UFOs for Canada's 100th anniversary, which is coincidental that Paul Hellyer was the man who christened it, and he didn't even believe in UFOs back then.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Well, he probably did on a subconscious level. I have a lot of theories about Paul Hellyer and his and how connected he might really be because of his incredible. Oh, what a beautiful man! I've been so blessed to meet him on several occasions. I just have to say, what a gentle, loving soul he is. What a wonderful person he is. You're absolutely right, Dave. And in fact, I was just reading some statistics today that in Canada specifically, there are something like 1,000 reports of sightings or experiences on a daily basis. So there's a lot going on. We have huge amounts of activity going on here. And, again, it's not being really recognized or reported by any sort of mainstream media, even though it's happening to primarily reputable, legitimate people. And why this is, it's very fear-based to me. It seems incredibly fear-based. What is the mainstream media in Canada so afraid of? Why is it okay to run American shows with people running into haunted houses and using EMF meters and antagonizing discarnate entities? Why is that entertainment and okay? And yet legitimate experiences of contact and sightings are still just in the fringe, out there in the fringe somewhere. I was reminded of course, this is a huge country, and every province is going to have its different character and its different, its different sociological makeup and such. But not too long ago, I guess it was about a year ago, I was going to make a trip out to Vancouver, where my son is in school, one of my sons, and I contacted the Vancouver, or perhaps it was the BC chapter of MUFON. Now, forgive me if I don't have any
UFO
any names.
BC.
Pardon me?
UFO BC.
I think it was UFO BC, but there is also a MUFON chapter that is based in Vancouver. But I talked to UFO BC, but and that gentleman, I believe it was Brian Rohr, was very helpful. But now MUFON, I am one of the few. I'm one of only 36. I think that's the number Kathy Martin told me. I'm one of only like 36 certified and properly vetted mental health practitioners that receives cases from MUFON and participates in investigations. So I thought, well, obviously, if I come out to Vancouver MUFON, they're going to have some interest, and maybe they would like me to speak at their group. Maybe some people would like regressions, who knows? And the head of Vancouver MUFON had no interest in my services or me. And in fact, I found out later, had been telling all of the various members of Vancouver MUFON that regression is highly overrated and something to not even be bothered with. So here I am, one of the only Canadian people to be, certified by MUFON, and MUFON itself in Vancouver, which, by the way, has no meetings. Apparently, they have no budget, so they have no meetings. But they themselves, or the leader or the head of the MUFON BC, has his mind completely closed to the idea that experiencers could have recovered memories through the use of hypnosis.
You know what? I have a bad taste in my mouth from MUFON in general, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
I did an interview with a state director north of us, shall we say, without naming the state. Anyhow, this poor lady was so nervous she couldn't put 5 words together. And I put literally 2 hours of painful radio together. And that it wasn't her fault. She was nervous. She hadn't done it before, okay? I felt bad for her.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, when you have all the gumption of MUFON saying, we're number one, we are the people who are doing it, then you have Robert Bigelow's connection, okay? Mm-hmm. His connection to Black Ops, government, science projects, the Skinwalker Ranch. I have an issue with that. I have an issue with MUFON Canada when they are not reporting what is going on. I have an issue that a lot of these people in MUFON, and I've had them come into my chat room and absolutely start trying to destroy and bully my audience because my audience thinks differently than a MUFON investigator. These people who are involved with MUFON, I'm not saying that they don't have the right idea, but from what I see on this side of the microphone, most MUFON people prefer the title, I'm part of MUFON, than they actually do care about finding the answers that are absolutely necessary. And you being a part of MUFON with coming to Vancouver and trying to meet up with this gentleman, well, if he's following the MUFON handbook, it should have been a no-brainer getting you involved.
Yeah. Well, you within MUFON, and I should just say, I do work with some really wonderful people in Ontario. Stu Bundy, Dave, and our friend, our mutual friend Ryan, who is a field investigator. I've worked with some really wonderful people in Ontario, and but I think that, like with much of ufology, there seems to be a little division. On one side, we have the very right-brained people who, I guess, more like coming from a Stanton Friedman type of perspective. They want to see, they're very interested in sightings, they're very interested in physical evidence, they're not necessarily interested in what experiencers go through, because it may not be completely physical in the way that they think of it. So they're kind of narrow in that regard, and very right-brained and very focused on sightings, and that's about it. So you've got that element, and there are a lot of individuals that would fall into that category that are involved with MUFON. Now, on the other side, you have people who are more open to a more wide range of esoteric experiences, who have a sort of a different idea about consciousness and interdimensionality, and I would put my good friend and your good friend Grant Cameron in that category.
Yes.
And Grant himself, switched from being a really right-brained, fact-based guy into opening up to really consciousness. And so there are these two types of elements that one finds, I think, in ufology. And to me, for myself, I'm not particularly concerned with the lights in the sky and that kind of physical evidence. I'm that isn't what really captivates me. What captivates me is the journeys that people have taken, and their bravery, and their insights, and their courage. And experiencers are the key to this whole puzzle,
Amen.
Dave, because if we're dealing with fairly evolved beings, we are dealing with beings that are not only telepathic, but are really, dare I say it, largely interdimensional. And if you don't want to use that word, I think that they're able to bend space-time. I think that they are able to manipulate matter, things which I think we can even do ourselves in time, or some of us can even, not myself, but some people can even do these things now. But I think the real crux of what drives me in this entire field of study is the fascinating array of experiences that people have with a wide variety of beings.
Leslie, we have about 30 seconds with you, okay?
Okay. So that's so we'll get into some more of that, I'm sure, in the next segment.
Absolutely, and I want to get into a couple of more points on this whole Canadian side of ufology, because I think it's important. We need to be able to meld ufology under one banner. And in North America here, if one area, example here, Canada, is not pulling its weight compared to the great research that is being done in the United States, even by Canadian researchers down there, there's a problem. There's a big problem with that.
Well, there is a problem, and we do have to take some responsibility ourselves. You know, for instance, as I mentioned, we had this wonderful ufology convention in the Ontario area, which could be magnificent, but petty fighting and egos and small-mindedness and small-town BS.
I'm going to get you to hold that thought right there, because we're going to step out for a break. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Leslie Mitchell-Clarke is our guest. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries, so tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night on the show, we are stepping into the realm of conspiracy. 9/11 will be the topic. Do you remember that documentary, Loose Change? Corey Rowe from Loose Change will be with us tomorrow night as we get deep into 9/11 and the conspiracy behind it tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. Hey, if you're listening to us on Revolution Radio, thank you so much. Remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, head to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight, and it's not plethora. No, it is Hebitude. Hebitude is the password. What that means, I have no idea. But it's something to do with the topic, and that's where we'll keep it. Thank you, Bill. He sets the password every night. Remember, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. We got a bunch of cool stuff there. Tonight, we are talking with Leslie Mitchell-Clarke. She is a Canadian hypnotherapist via New York, which means hopefully she's a Yankees fan like me, but...
Betcha.
Yes, next year is our year. Next year is our year. It has to be. Exactly. But we are talking a heck of a lot more important things here than baseball tonight. And right before the break, Lesley, you were talking about the experiencer and the importance of the experiencer. One of the things that has really upset me, and a couple weeks ago, I actually spoke at my first Paracon down in Washington State, Forest Moon Paranormal Paracon.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and you know what? It really invigorated me and really told me a lot about what I want to do in this field, and that is do it full time. Mm-hmm. But my speech was on exactly what you were saying, is that the mainstream researchers are so stubborn and head-focused on the government disclosing, or what is hiding at Area 51, or who is having contact with government officials. Everything seems to be pointing towards the government. That even though researchers still want to hear the story, the experiencer's own story means absolutely nothing to most researchers these days. And to me, I find that absolutely insulting to the people, the thousands upon thousands of people nightly who are being taken against their will, who are being taken for no reason, and even if they're having benevolent contact, the fact is they're still having experiences that they can't explain. And yet we as a research phenomena, which we are turning our backs against the people who are telling the stories. Can you imagine if we turned our backs on Betty and Barney Hill back in the day?
Oh, and you know, that is so true, Dave. You know, everything you're saying is just, you know, resonating, and I think it's the habitudinous government that is really the problem.
Nice use of the password there. Nice use.
But you know, this yes, Betty and Barney Hill. Of course, you know, that's the ground zero really case of contemporary abduction phenomena. And again, you had some very believable people. Betty Hill, a social worker, a social activist. Barney Hill, a postmaster, you know, leader of the NAACP in Concord or close by to where they lived. And these, you know, these poor people, you know, kept their experience secret. They finally saw a hypnotist of the day, and you know, of course, what he did with them would be considered very poor therapeutic practice now, but at the time, Dr. Simon was the leading expert on post-traumatic stress disorder, or as we would call it, shell shock. You know, so he had been working with a lot of soldiers who'd seen terrible things, and even now, you know, people will still dispute the reality of what happened to them. And you know, I think that you know, Kathy Marden has and Stan Friedman have, you know, written the definitive book about the Betty and Barney Hill experience, which is loaded with fresh information. And I suggest that anyone out there, you know, might want to revisit. You know, what you think you know is probably rather limited compared to the information that Kathy Marden was able to provide, and Stan Friedman as well. So, but yes, the experiencer is everything. Experiencers are mocked. They are, why, you know, it's like, why would anyone want to come forward, considering the treatment of people who have an alternative story to tell? And as you said, even if experiencers are having benevolent experiencers, which is most of what I seem to find, I would say upwards of 95% of the types of experiences that people are having are positive or at least benign. But even those people suffer sleep deprivation. There can be physical repercussions. They can still be having implants and various markings and various things going on. Sometimes I believe that the experiencer is a participant. I think most of the time the experiencer is a willing participant. They're just not cognizant of that in their waking life. But still in all, even people with the most positive experiences have a lot of fallout, a lot of emotional fallout. They have difficulty with relationships. Sometimes they have difficulty holding jobs. There are There seems to be a pattern of authority issues. And why wouldn't there be? If you were going to bed every night not knowing if somebody more powerful than you was going to be messing about with you. Why wouldn't you have authority issues? You know what I'm saying?
So what is the fear then from researchers? And I'm going to throw out some names there of people who have questioned this. Richard Dolan, Stanton has done it as well. I'm thinking Stephen Bassett, although he is on a totally different plane.
Yeah.
For what he is trying to disclose. Even Grant Cameron.
Yeah.
Okay. Linda Moulton Howe. Whitley Strieber, who is probably the most, next to Travis Walton, the most experienced experiencer and popular experiencer out there. And yet, here we are taking the words from, say, the local doctor, the local night shift McDonald's cleanup crew, gas station attendants, construction workers. It doesn't matter who you are. And we're telling them that, yeah, we're sorry this is happening to you, but, it's not going to make a difference. You're just going to have to live with it. Yeah.
And remember that a lot of these dear souls, they do explore, modern medicine, as we call it, lest we laughingly call it, including psychiatry, and very often they're being diagnosed with dissociative disorders or bipolar disorders. They may be medicated. They doubt their own sanity. So it isn't even enough that these people are living an extra-dimensional type of existence and having to then what would be corral themselves in two-dimensional reality for their waking hours, where they are dismissed. There are even, there are some wonderful experiencers who have come to me where their spouses are in complete disbelief. They have no support from their spouses. And there's someone that you would know who is a multiple experiencer. I probably can't say his name, but he hasn't been on the airwaves or on my show or really speaking publicly for some time, simply because his wife doesn't believe it and thinks that he's disgracing the family. So can you imagine living with a partner, someone who allegedly loves you and trusts you, who doesn't believe you? And this is very common. And the irony is that oftentimes when these experiences happen at night or whatever, for instance, I can speak openly about my dear friend and client Wes Roberts. In his previous relationship, all kinds of stuff happened to him at night with beings coming in and this and that, and his then wife would be literally turned off, because that's very commonly what goes on in a couple situation where the beings are only really interested in interacting with one of the people. The other person is put into some type of Esdale state, some type of hypnotic coma, and is unresponsive and cannot be wakened.
I know that feeling. My wife, believe it or not, has actually, my studio is right below my master bedroom in my house. My wife has actually been taken while I've been doing this show.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. And, when we talk about, we look at things in such a narrow, people who are right-brained and are invested in that kind of data consciousness have a very difficult time thinking about the mutability of space-time. So, in other words, I think, and this would not be unusual, someone, a couple, say there's a couple and say the wife is turned off and unconscious and the male partner is the one who goes on the journey. It can seem as if they're back in 5 minutes, when yet they can have hours and hours, or what we would think of as, in time demarcations, hours and hours of experiences on a craft, going to a class, engaging with other experiencers. It's like these people are living, these special, really blessed people are living double lives. And yet with the mutability of space-time, they are still able to function in our 24-hour agreement, if you will. So I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Dave, or your wife has, but it seems to be quite common in what I find that the normal rules of time do not really apply to these experiences. A whole bunch of experiences can happen that seems to take hours and maybe even days, and yet when the individual is returned or comes or wakes up in the morning or what have you, it's only been a very short period of time. So that's something that we see quite frequently. So we really know that we're dealing with beings who are able to affect space-time.
During the Experiencers Conference, or pardon me, the Cosmic Expo, or, leading up to it, we did a lot of shows on the Cosmic Expo. Bob was gracious enough to allow us to be the show of the Cosmic Expo, which blew me away. It blew me away, and I'm so thankful for that. And we had about 10 or 12 different guests on that month, including Victor Vigiani.
Right.
And I'm curious to get your opinion on this because I've stated a couple times on this show. I have no scientific background. I will not use this as a scientific study, but I'm going to say my own personal research just through this show. And I'm curious to get your response, Lesley.
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed that it seems American citizens who are being taken or having contact are way more likely to have malevolent contact than Canadian contactees. Now, I would say from what I've studied on here, about 8 out of every 10 Canadian contactee has had benevolent experiences compared to just the nasty, horrid nightmares that we hear of. Why do you think there is a big difference in regards to it?
Well, there are a couple things that may be at play. I think one of the big things that we would have to mention is simply that this is a case of perception. That what people are remembering are maybe sort of augmented conscious memories mixed with subconscious memories, and perhaps the reality of the experience is not necessarily as negative as the fragmented memories that the person is left with. So their own anxieties are being projected into the experience. That's one way to look at it. Now, the other thing, which seems a little more likely to me, is you kind of have to go back to the, say something like Richard Corso's book, The Day After Roswell. You have to kind of go back to the circa World War II involvement with a specific group of ETs. And I believe, and what has been told to me by some figures who were fairly high up, I believe that there was some type of an agreement made with a specific group of Greys where a certain amount of abductions for genetic research were going to be allowed. And I think it was a trade-off for technology. I think that technology that we received launched the parallel space program, and also Velcro. So
don't forget Velcro.
Velcro, and there were a few little things that leaked into our culture because some of these technological miracles and that we received at that time were parceled off to various military and industrial branches, separated so that no one would have the complete big picture. But I think that there have been agreements in place with various, or maybe even one specific group of ETs that tend to be involved with the genetic taking of genetic material and such. Now, also, it would seem that at least I can only talk about, the work that myself and some of my other colleagues like Barbara Lamb are doing. There seems to now be a great shift where the types of experiences, the negative types of experience, the real abduction things that I used to hear about when I was first doing this work now seem to be almost non-existent, at least from the work that I'm doing. Now, I'm certainly not saying, Dave, that they're not happening and that they're not happening in the U.S. with greater abundance, but there may be a kind of permission that has been given by the United States government in the past.
And that goes back to Eisenhower in around 1953-55.
Exactly. It actually probably goes back to Truman a little bit before that. But yes, exactly. We're talking about a Cold War era, post-World War II era, influx of technology in exchange for access to certain people. Now, abductees themselves, or experiencers, whatever term you are comfortable using, these are special people. I don't think it's random. There's a lot of evidence that supports that experiencers or abductees or contactees, that it runs in families for generations. So this would definitely point to an interest in genetic material. And a high percentage of experiencers and abductees have O-negative blood. There are all kinds of commonalities, physical commonalities, and I'm sure there are genetic commonalities that we just don't completely understand. It could be that a certain percentage of the people on our planet are carrying sophisticated Anunnaki DNA. It could be that we all are, but they're definitely interested in family lines. I am not sure that there is such thing as a random abduction. I used to think there was, but I'm not sure now, especially after speaking to Travis Walton personally and off the record. He had, I guess it's all right for me to say this, he indicated to me, not in detail, but that there had been experiences earlier in his life. And that it wasn't just a random thing where he was out there, chopping down the trees with his buddies and became curious about the craft. And, I think it's more complex than that. And also, Kathy Marden did convey to me that Betty Hill, not Barney, but Betty Hill had previous experiences.
I can see that. So in the end, would you say it's because Canada has never been a leader in technology? We've always been a follower. We're an export country rather than an import country. Would you say we're an import country rather than an export country. Would you say then that because we didn't cut a deal, that's the reason why all the other more benevolent types of extraterrestrials are heading to countries like Canada, because there is no abduction for technology treaty?
I think it's very possible. Now, you also have to. We're really more in a category with, say, Europe, because we have a neutrality. We did not fight in the Vietnam War. I mean, we have a history of neutrality. Now, this is, of course, arguable, and maybe I'm being idealistic about that, but we certainly would not have signed the treaty. Now, that being said, Dave, there's one individual that I work with as an experiencer who has, very much like Randy Kramer, Captain K, has had an experience in the parallel space program in the military. And the individuals who experience these types of events where they participate as a cadet and then they go on, and they're often attached to military families where the fathers are involved, or more commonly than the mothers, but where the fathers are involved. And very often the individuals who are being sort of utilized or inducted into these sort of military programs have been stationed along the DEW line, which, as I understand it, is a completely U.S. and Canadian animal, if you will. And at one time, particularly during the Cold War, there were all kinds of military bases along the DEW line, the division between the U.S. and Canada, specifically because they wanted to observe Russia, be close to Russia, but a lot of experiencers, and particularly Carl Dorey, who I'm speaking of, he wouldn't mind if I mentioned his name. These individuals have been raised or stationed with their families in some type of military setting that is a collaborative setting between the U.S. and Canada.
That's an interesting theory. Interesting theory. It was something that I picked up on in this show, just doing this show. And it's funny, when Victor Vigiani and I had talked about this theory on the air, there's a very, very brilliant gentleman in the field of ufology. He's made incredible strides, on both sides of the border towards it, and it was something he had never even thought about.
Yeah. It's first of all, I just have to say, I think Victor Vigiani is a genius. And I don't use that term lightly. He's a master educator. He's one of the great thinkers that we have, in this whole area of interest today. And my feeling is that I would just hope that he would become more and more and more active, and maybe even step a little bit into Bob Mitchell's sizable shoes. Because he has the type of credibility and the type of history as a legitimate post-secondary educator, multiply degreed. He has the type of legitimacy that we need to move into the mainstream.
I want to get to some questions from our audience because they are piling up. But first off, I do want to say, because you read the comments and you use the password Hebitude so perfectly, Bill Cardwell has given you a big mention in the SOR Space Travelers, and to earn those big mentions, you have to be a member of the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, and he has given you one, so you have to check that out later when you read the comments.
Oh, I will. Well, bless his heart. Thank you so much. And if I could, I would just like to shout out to my dear friend James Borg, who I just was, when we were off the air for a bit, I was just checking the Twitter feed, and he's online there, and he did ask that I tell my little story at some point about my own experience, but that would be totally up to you. But I'm perfectly happy to talk about that later. But let's hear what the space travelers have to say.
Well, and James Borg is growing an incredible hockey mullet right now as we speak. I can feel it growing as we speak. I love James. James is good people, and I know you're listening, James. Thank you for being a good friend of this show and allowing us to be a part of Euphoria Chronicles as well. Let's get to Char's question right off the bat. She is asking, Leslie, can you hypnotize someone? Or pardon me, let me rephrase this. Can hypnosis let you see someone you have been made to forget?
I would say the big answer to that is yes. My feeling about suppressed memories, and I do believe that the beings that people encounter have the capability to, sort of put the whammy on us and indeed, suppress memories with some type of, hypnotic technique that they can use remotely. But my feeling is that this suppression of memories is sort of time dated, that it is not possible to suppress memories forever, that they will begin to bubble to the surface. So when someone comes to see me, and this goes across the board, this would also, say someone has just had, let's just put it in a real, real garden variety sense. Someone has had childhood trauma, perhaps sexual abuse, but they don't really remember it. They come to me with fragmented memories, some conscious memories, but mostly just awful feelings, sometimes bad dreams. And this is usually the way that experiencers will first come see me, because they're tormented by disturbing dreams, and they have flashes of conscious memory, and then the rest is a blank. So most of the time, experiencers are wonderful hypnotic subjects. And I think that it's because they are, by their nature and by their virtue of being selected as experiencers, they usually have a lot of psychic ability. And they usually slip into the trance state very easily. And once someone is in the trance state, they have complete access to what has occurred. They can tell me what they were wearing to their 5th birthday party. They can, so it's a computer. It's like they can go into the file system. The brain is kind of a computer, and once I can get in there and speak directly to the subconscious mind, which is where all of our stuff is stored, then they can just go into the computer. Now, I have a big proviso for that, but the short answer to the question is absolutely. Sometimes experiencers recognize each other. In other words, you might be at the supermarket and you see someone that is so familiar, but you can't quite, you don't quite know where you knew them from. You don't want to speak to them, but they keep resonating with you. And sometimes then, if that's the situation, when I am working with an experiencer and I put them into trance, they will recall that person, that random person that they saw in the supermarket, was with them during some type of a group experience. So yes, I think that we can, generally speaking, if the hypnosis is successful, and there's someone that you cannot recall in your conscious life, that we can get to that with hypnotherapeutic techniques. And of course, my thing is that I have the client or the experiencer, their memory is restored. I have them remember everything. And this is the contemporary way to do regression. Dr. Simon, in working with Betty and Barney Hill, he worked with them separately because he was trying to do some kind of double-blind test to make sure that they weren't lying or collaborating or what have you. And so, he would go through this incredibly, emotional regression release of experience, particularly with Barney, and then shove it all back in and tell Barney, you won't remember anything that we discussed today. So that just simply would not be done today. That is destructive, emotionally devastating, and it was emotionally devastating for Barney, I think, particularly. So I guess the short answer there would be yes.
That was a long way to a yes. But that's okay.
I know, wasn't it?
That's okay.
Just stop me. Stop me, because I can't help myself.
No way. Robert Rose has a comment here, and he has asked, and I'm curious your opinion on this because I think it's a great opinion. He says, I feel that experiencers sometimes feel the same fear of ridicule as sex crime victims. What is your thoughts with that?
Well, there can be a lot of shame, absolutely, and certainly the same, because, let's see, yes, there can be a lot of shame with these experiences, particularly if there's some type of, usually they're not the experiences, although somebody's taking genetic material, they're not sexual in the way that we think of sex, although I have had experiencers who have had what you would call sexual experiences with beings that were, screening themselves to look more humanoid. So that does happen. But yes, I would have to agree. There's often a lot of shame and trauma. The same kind of thing you would see in sexual abuse, where the individual has taken the guilt upon themselves for somehow causing the incident, or eliciting it, or wanting it. So yes, that is a very interesting parallel. And further to what this the space traveler just asked, further to that, sometimes I do have problems regressing individuals who have had experiences of sexual abuse in their physical two-dimensional life. Now, as an example, in the, I think this last Alien Cosmic Expo that I was not involved in, there was a young lady that was being, purported as a experiencer. No doubt she's an experiencer, what have you. I had a session with her, and did get her into hypnosis. And what I found was profound trauma and child abuse in her real-time life. And I think in the case of this young lady, I am not convinced that she was an experiencer. I believe that in some type of dream language or some type of suppression, she had converted the trauma, the terrible trauma of her childhood, into experiences that for her were more easy to accept than the reality of what had happened to her in this life. And that's because I couldn't really regress her to anything that was in my experience completely probative of an extraterrestrial encounter. And she talked a lot about pain and a lot about things that it just really, I did not feel comfortable with saying that she was a legitimate experiencer, and yet she was touted that way. So when you're dealing with an individual who has had a lot of trauma in their life, particularly in the realm of sexual abuse as a child, we have to be very cautious, and because the mind would rather accept that there were extraterrestrial beings violating you as a child than, Uncle Bob, or your father, or what have you.
Yes, absolutely. Brand new listener tonight, Joni. She's out of Toronto as well. So thank you.
Another relative, Joni Mitchell, I think.
Yes. This one's not singing any Joni Mitchell, though, because Joni Mitchell, the singer, is banned from here. And I'll tell you the story why. When I worked and started in radio, I was reading the morning news at this small little radio station on Vancouver Island. It had a beautiful view of the ocean, though. I can tell you that. But my morning DJ, because up here in Canada, we have a thing called CanCon. So 33% of the music that is played on Canadian radio stations has to be from Canadian artists. So that way it kind of keeps people going, hey, get into the arts, get into music, everything like that. And you will be played. Anyhow, he played Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi 2 to 4 times a day. And to this day, I have such a mental rage when I hear that song, and then the Counting Crows went and redid it.
I know.
and I'll tell you, it drove me absolutely haywire. And every time I hear that song, I go right into road rage. Almost effective immediately. But this is a much younger and, I'm going to say, much more blessed Joni Mitchell.
All right. Well, I would love to hear what this lovely young lady has to say.
She has a 2-part question, and then she has a follow-up. Her 2-part question is this. What is the connection between mediums and aliens? And any idea what alien is visiting her? Or how she could find out?
Well, I could work with her on Skype. This is, I probably, this would be something that would require some hypnosis if she would like to, look at these experiences. Obviously, she feels confident that this would be a positive thing that she'd like to find out about. I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question, Dave? Forgive me. The first part?
The first part was the connection between mediums and extraterrestrials.
Well, I will say that there is a huge connection because most extraterrestrials are operating telepathically at all times. So mediums have been used to communicate with extraterrestrials by the U.S. government for years. And they, although they haven't totally admitted that, Part of my own little story has to do with a lady that I knew who worked for the U.S. government and was a psychic, and she was part of a program where they picked up all these psychics and communicators, in Las Vegas and to the little, secret Dreamland airport and flew them out to Area 51, and they worked in telepathic communication with beings. So I think that there is a huge connection. In fact, really in the big picture, I think that our so-called afterlife may simply just be, another dimensional state which is also peopled by beings of all sorts. Because in the work that I've done in past life regression and particularly interlife regression, which is where we're deciding about coming back into the physical realm, it's very frequent that individuals see, tall beings or beings of all different sorts. So, we're in a soul group. We're in a soul group with a lot of different physically shaped beings, some of which are more light matter than they are dense matter. But the definite role of the medium as a communicator has been essential to governments and remains essential. In fact, it's my understanding that some of the protocols that Dr. Stephen Greer has developed, which are sort of Vedic in origin, really do involve putting yourself into an altered state so that you can communicate telepathically with the beings. So this is something to be desired. So I would say any spiritual discipline that you do, whether it's meditation, no matter what it is, anything that increases your sensitivity is going to be helpful with communicating with extraterrestrial beings.
Her second question is, where do you see someone like her being able to use her abilities and gifts when it comes to the ET experience?
Well, I think all experiencers are gifted. I think they're special people. And no doubt, she has a unique path, maybe even as a practitioner herself at some point and helping other experiencers in some way. I think that's kind of exponentially how this is going. We may not see a big landing on the White House lawn in the physical sense, like in the day the Earth stood still. I personally think, and I agree with Grant Cameron, that disclosure is all about the experiencers, and the fact that she is an experiencer or is at least sensitive to the entire issue tends to lend me to believe that she has great compassion, and no matter what she chooses to do, whether it's a little group that just talks about ufology at Second Cup, or whether it's a more formalized thing, or whether she decides to write, anything that she would do to share her experience or her feelings of experiences or her openness to experiences is going to support and validate and comfort those many, many experiencers who are in complete isolation and believe that they are really mentally unsound.
We'll get to another question here. This one comes from Mario. And Mario is asking, I believe I've been programmed a lot in my life. I believe they are trying to mask my memories with fake ones. How can I determine if my original memories have been tampered with? And I'll get to the second part right after that.
Well, again, this is kind of a bit of a negative perspective on what may actually be happening. I think I think it's possible that we receive downloads that are meant to help us and give us information, but they could be perceived as controls. It would be difficult for me to really get any more specific with that without working with him and doing a regression. But I would just say, as a general rule, when someone comes to me and they believe that they are being controlled or programmed when we get in there and really look at the experiences, what we generally find are, as I mentioned, that people are receiving downloads of information. And there may be, and of course, if someone has been an experiencer since childhood, which is generally the case, in the early years of experiencers, the beings use a lot of screen images. They use a lot of that type of technique, but I believe now that it's really only to comfort the younger person and to make them more comfortable with the experience, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. So I would like to, I accept what he's saying, that it feels like that, but I would like to get in there and really have a look at what's going on. And I think that the reality of what's going on may be a lot more positive than he thinks.
Second part to that, how can he determine if it's a real memory or an implanted one?
Well, this kind of determination is something that's not very easy to do on your own. Now, there are people who can put themselves in meditative states and basically, look around and they're able to get deeper insight. But it would be most helpful to see someone, like myself, who is a certified hypnotherapist and a regressionist, who could explore some of these memories. I have no doubt that there's a mix of screen memories and real experiences going on here. I have no doubt that that's probably what's going on. And but we would like to, what I would be interested in is, why are there screen memories? Are they in place for his own protection so that he can simply understand things in a gradual way without some sort of shock? It could be anything, but I have no doubt that there is some combination of screen memories and real memories. But again, let's not put a negative spin on that. I know that the beings are sometimes, or a certain group of beings are sometimes very interested in emotions. I don't know whether they have lost emotions, whether they don't experience them anymore, or whether they're very interested in the glandular activities or the release of hormones or endorphins, or perhaps the stimulation of the hypothalamus that happens during fear. But there seems to be a big interest in emotions with at least, some groups of extraterrestrials that have been engaging with us. So they sometimes will create, I think, fearful or disturbing scenarios in the sense of staging and screening, in order simply to study our emotional workings and our biochemical workings, perhaps even our fight or flee mechanism. These may be things that they have lost, or they, this is just my speculation.
Shar is asking, have you ever looked into finding a way that a person can make these experiences stop on their own?
Yes. Now, bear in mind, when we get in there and start really looking at the experiences, most experiencers have the great, sort of illumination, if you will, that they are really partners in this kind of work. And so they go from being fearful and wanting it all to stop to wanting to become a more equal participant. So that's what happens most of the time. But what we do, what I have the experiencers do that I work with that want it to stop or don't want to be bothered at night, is simply to communicate that. And most of the time, that is all it takes to either stop the experiences or to allow the person to get some sleep at night. I am not sure all the beings that visit us really understand our physical need for sleep and the way we clean out our subconscious and REM state. I'm not sure they really understand that we need to sleep. We can't be constantly interrupted. We need it. So I will generally just simply ask the client to speak to the beings directly right from the hypnosis chair and tell them what they want. And when that happens, it seems to be a direct psychic communication, even if it's happening just right here in my office, you know. And sometimes my office gets very warm with like presence. You know, I would, I don't usually discuss this because I don't want to seem that I'm not a medical professional, you know, but there is a difference in the feeling between when there's ET presences and when perhaps there are discarnate human entities, spirits, if you will. If there's spirit activity, discarnate humans who have an agenda or who haven't moved on, we tend to get cold spots and coldness because they're trying to utilize energy. They're taking caloric energy, you know, heat energy, because it's all that's available. So we get these. It's cold spots are not necessarily negative. It's just a discarnate being trying to manifest, and they're taking energy. So that's what it feels like if I'm having spirit presences. But when there are ET presences, which I wouldn't see necessarily, the room where I'm working with the experiencer gets very, very hot. And that's always a great sign to me that we're being successful.
We got time for one more question. We got about 5 minutes here before we're going to go to break, and I want to sneak Ron's question in. And he is asking, Leslie, what is your opinion on human beings being a gigantic alien experiment, and what ancient and present-day humans view as God is really alien observers?
I think that's very probable. Now, I do think that there is a creative force of the universe which is really incomprehensible to us and is part and parcel of all life. That there is a creative force, although I certainly wouldn't, construct an anthropomorphic God. I personally am a big subscriber to the work of Zecharia Sitchin, and I do believe that we were upgraded from a particular, simian group that had evolved, maybe even pre-Neanderthal. Now we know there were many, many groups of hominids, not just 2 or 3, right? We know there were a lot of options. But I do believe that we were genetically upgraded, that we're carrying Anunnaki DNA, that we have latent abilities that are tremendous, and that we were, in fact, upgraded maybe initially to be a servant class and to work in the gold mines and of South Africa and elsewhere. And however, at a certain point, we achieved a kind of equality or détente with our progenitors, because they are us and we are them. They are not gods, but they were interpreted as gods. So I'm in complete agreement with that philosophy. I think that is exactly what happened. I think we are hybrids. I think that O-negative blood was the first blood type. It was the Anunnaki blood type, and that's why only 15% of the population has it now, although 60% of the Basque people are carrying O-negative blood, which is interesting. But and I think eventually through genetics we're just finding out more and more and more that we're carrying a lot of extra stuff. And also as human beings, we are susceptible to a wide variety of illnesses. I mean, thousands of different types of genetic abnormalities that can happen to us. Well, we don't see this in any other biological creatures on the Earth. We see some genetic anomalies maybe that are probably caused by our pollutions or whatever, but we don't see the wide range of fallibility that we have physically. And I think this is simply the result of imperfect genetic upgrading, that we have these frailties because of how we came to be.
I'm still not sure on that. I still think there is a higher power.
Well, I do too. I'm not saying there isn't, Dave. I'm not at all. But I do think that sophisticated ancient aliens who came here, messed about with us genetically, they were also monotheistic. The Anunnaki were completely monotheistic. They did not have multiple gods. They had one god that they believed, or God, or power source, or whatever. So, I don't think one thing necessarily discounts the other.
Very understandable. Very understandable. However, I can honestly say in my point, and I've talked to a couple others, especially I have added a scientist on the Spaced Out Radio team, Eric Markham, and we're still trying to figure out if this whole Rh negative blood actually makes any type of play in that. And I'll get your opinion on that after we go to break, because we are less than a minute away from doing that.
Okie dokie.
But you are doing fantastic tonight, LMC. Fantastic. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
I'm fully caffeinated.
Oh, I wish I was. My diverticulitis is acting up the last 12 hours. So
boy, I could really help you with that with hypnotherapy. I have a whole treatment plan that I do for that.
Oh, well, maybe I'll have to take you up on that, because I ate too much beef lately. And it's
hard to process that, an abundance of that, But also, diverticulitis is very common in anybody of a certain age.
Absolutely.
It's pretty common. So, anyway, break time.
On that note, let's hop out for a break. More with Leslie Mitchell-Clarke on Spaced Out Radio, hour number 3 coming up after this.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you along for the ride. Tomorrow night on the show, we step into the conspiracy of 9/11. Remember the documentary Loose Change? Corey Rowe from Loose Change is going to join us for the first 2 hours tomorrow night. It's going to be very, very interesting program indeed. And if you want to warm up for that, go to YouTube, download Loose Change. It's about an hour and a half, well worth the investigation. It's an amazing piece of information that they have uncovered on 9/11. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com if you want to tune it in. If you are listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, visit freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell in the SOR Space Travelers Club has set the password at Hebitude. Hebitude is your password. Leslie Mitchell-Clarke loves that. She even used it in a sentence. She's so brilliant. She's so brilliant. Hey, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show or others on iTunes. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can join the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. Listen to our music man, Bumblefoot. Read up on the SOR Space Wire. Check out some great videos that we have on there from Pacific North Weird and Robert Rose, and so much more. We got a lot of stuff happening at spacedoutradio.com. Check it out today. Leslie Mitchell-Clarke, once again, is our guest tonight. She is one of Canada's top hypnotherapists when it comes to ETs, abductees, contactees. Leslie, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave.
We have a bunch more questions from our audience that I would like to get to, because I always like to involve them.
Yes.
And we'll get to this one from Mario. He is saying, if I don't want to be hypnotized, what techniques could I use to stop this? I feel like hurting people real bad when they try to hypnotize me without my consent.
Well, first of all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, okay? All of it. There's no Manchurian Candidate syndrome where I can go in there and make you do something that you don't want to do. I don't care, what it is. I don't care if it's weight loss. I don't care if it's quitting smoking. If the client doesn't want to do it, the hypnosis simply will not work, because all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So you don't need to have any fear about people trying to hypnotize you when you don't want to be hypnotized. And I certainly understand that. A lot of people have trepidation. They don't really understand. All hypnosis is a state of deep relaxation that allows us to access the subconscious mind. And, the amazing magic thing about hypnosis that was discovered, 5,000 years ago, is that when the body can get physically relaxed enough, when you can really get the body relaxed, then that little membrane, if you want to call it a membrane or a veil, that exists between the conscious mind that we function with in our reality, which is just a little tiny part of us, and the subconscious mind, which is our big computer vault, and that's where our behaviors are formed. And we can access the subconscious mind when we're in a deep state of relaxation. Now, if you do not want to see a practitioner like myself, I completely understand that. So what I would recommend is finding a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, nice, comfy chair, quiet, safe place. I would also recommend visualizing that you are surrounding yourself with white light. If you do other types of protection, that would be fine. You could burn some sage, whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable. But because you're going to put yourself into a light trance and a meditative state without a practitioner, so you want to be protected, right? So visualize white light coming up from beneath the earth, coming up through the foundation of whatever structure you're in, coming up through the walls and acting like a sieve, and just removing any and all negativity and casting it into the center of the universe. So get a nice quiet place, visualize the white light, and then simply speak in your mind to the beings that you wish to communicate with, and just tell them what you want to say, whether it's leave me alone, whether it's reveal more to me in my dreams. No matter what it is, you have the absolute ability to communicate with the beings directly, if you wish to. It's kind of like, I was raised as a Catholic, right? But I no longer believe that you need a priest to communicate with God. There doesn't have to be a middleman. I think most people that come to me, are so conflicted and have such suppressed memories that they do need my direct techniques to get to the issues that they want to get to. But if you're just talking about communicating, you can do that yourself. All you need to do is put yourself into a meditative state of relaxation. Just make everything calm around you. Visualize that protection that I described, or whatever protection seems appropriate for you. It could be anything. It could be religious. I'm not sure what works for you. As long as you feel comfortable and safe, and then you can just speak in your mind directly to the beings that you wish to. And they may speak back psychically. You may be very surprised at how that works.
They do. I can say
Yes.
that from personal experience. They do.
Yes. All you have to do is ask, and they'll probably be, delighted, as a matter of fact.
Oh, they're not liking me right now. I kind of told them off.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of told them off. So
Okay.
Yeah, we're having a little tiff right now recently, so it's all good. It's all good, though. I do have another question. This one comes from Spear. Have you ever encountered my labs?
Yes. I mean, not me personally, but I have certainly done some work with individuals who have had those types of experiences. It's my belief that me labs are really a human, a military construct. Now, certainly there can be some ET involvement, but the kinds of things that are going on in me labs, and when I regress people and they are able to tell me a lot about what's going on and what they're experiencing, it's primarily humanoids that are involved. So, I don't think we need any trouble to be terrible to ourselves. I think we have to take responsibility for our lack of compassion, for our violent nature, for our warmongering. That's who we are. That doesn't have any. I don't think that has anything to do with ET involvement. It's very easy to blame it. The old scapegoat theory, to just blame our problems, both personal and societal, on something else, and not take responsibility for our own behaviors. So the worst things that I have uncovered in regression, the absolute worst things, seem to be perpetuated by humanoids.
Why do you say that?
Well, that's what people see. I have one client who has been taken to some type of a lab repeatedly in some kind of, bombed out section. Either it's the Bronx or part of Montreal. I don't know where it is, but it's a desolate bombed out section, and there's a massive lab underground, and they've been taken there multiple times, and all they see are human beings in black uniforms with insignias. And that's just one example. But anytime we get into this sort of me lab, this experimentation, this kind of thing going on a large scale in a big lab where someone is taken to a location on our planet, not necessarily on board a craft, this seems to be conducted primarily by humanoids and some gray hybrids.
Very interesting indeed. Let's get to another question here from our audience. This one comes from Robert Rose. He is asking, Leslie, it is my understanding, not fact, but my understanding, that sometimes screen memories seem out of place like snow in July on the beach. Things just don't seem to add up. Why is that?
Oh, yeah. Because I think, we're not dealing with perfect beings here. we're dealing with beings that are trying their best to to make us comfortable, and there are often huge flaws and gaffes, just like what you're talking about. Most often they're anachronistic. In other words, one of my clients had a very fascinating sort of screen memory laden experience when he was quite young, where he was taken to a kind of an apartment that he felt was supposed to look like it did when he was a child, but they were sort of off by about 30 or 40 years. And, the telephone was more, like what would have been in my grandparents' home, one of those old black heavy telephones. So there are absolutely flawed screen memories that occur. And in a way, I'm always kind of comforted when I see that, because it means that, we're just dealing with people like us who make mistakes. Imperfect research, I would have to say, would be the reason for that. But what you're talking about, I absolutely have found completely odd, mistake-laden, and primarily anachronistic gaffes in the screen memories.
Let's get to Michael's question. He is asking, Leslie, why do you feel that some extraterrestrials do downloads to abductees, and why some people are abducted multiple times and others only once?
I don't know if there's anyone who's been abducted only once. The more I go down the rabbit hole here, and even if someone claims that, more times than not, we get in there and find that they're a multiple experiencer. But I still am puzzled, and certainly don't have all the answers for the first part of your question as to why some people get downloads and others don't, and are involved in maybe more physical experiences. But I think when we're dealing with multiple species, we're going to have different types of experiences. And there are many, many types of beings that engage with us, mostly in a positive way. There are very humanoid beings. There are beings that are that they call the Nordics. They show up a lot. There are reptilian beings, some of which are benevolent, some of which seem to have a more militaristic, darker agenda. There are a wide variety of beings, but I do think that when you are on the path that you're supposed to be on, when you have been selected for contact, or when you're participating in contact, receiving the downloads is a big part of it. And I think that, even though, implants are used sometimes, again, that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's my feeling that implants, rather than some kind of tracking device, because let's face it, these beings don't need a tracking device to find us. Every brain emits its own signature. We have our own signature, our own vibration, which can just be tuned into, like turning the dial on the radio, right? So my feeling is that that implants, as such, are kind of like training wheels or enhancements. And that's the kind of answers that I seem to get when I have people in hypnosis, and I will say, ask the being what this implant is for. And they will always say, to help you, to make communication easier. Answers like that. So I just have to say, there are many different types of experiences. There are many different types of beings that we interact with. There are a wide variety of experiences, and but I do think that it's highly unusual for someone to have had only one abduction experience. That would be kind of counter to the pattern that we see, which I mentioned earlier with regards to even Travis Walton and Betty Hill.
Let's move on here to some more questions. Trip is asking, do you believe in Graham Hancock's theory on ancient civilizations?
I love Graham Hancock. I don't agree with him on everything. But I wonder if you could possibly be a little more specific in what you're talking about. Are you talking about the?
I think it's just
generalization
of the history of ancient aliens.
Well, Graham Hancock has been one of the first people to really, really talk about the true antiquity, the true dates of some of the structures in the ancient world. He's been a big proponent of, identifying the water damage on the Sphinx, which makes it, 60, 80,000 years old, and certainly not certainly not something that was constructed, by a late kingdom pharaoh. So, in everything that I've read of Graham Hancock's, I have absorbed and loved. When I did see him speak here in Toronto, he was not prepared to go as far as to say that we are a hybrid race. That he doesn't quite embrace, say, the Zecharia Sitchin sort of, or the Michael Tellinger kind of ideology. I think he thinks we were just more sophisticated humans that were subject to disasters that obliterated history and obliterated our memory. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's where I would differ in my opinion. Our origin stories with Graham Hancock, but most of what he says, I think he's brilliant. For one thing, I think he's a really marvelous person. He's a lovely person, by the way, very intelligent, and I primarily agree with what he has to say. But I think we divert when it gets to the origin of humanity, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, let's continue on as the questions keep coming for you.
Alrighty.
Absolutely. Getting into the Rh negative blood factor, and I know we touched on it a little bit, but the way the alternative media has jumped all over the Rh negative, do you believe really that there is something to this, or do you believe that because we don't know what is going on, or we haven't figured out the patterns on why people are being taken, that we are just pulling at straws trying to figure out anything that could be a human scientific answer to it?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we do know, and this is fairly recent information, we do know when the different infusions of blood types occurred, and it is now pretty much generally accepted that O is the seminal blood type. It is the oldest blood type of humanoids. And we certainly don't see this in the animal kingdom. It apparently is later that the B blood type came in, and even later still that the A blood type came in. Now, when you're talking about negative Rh, we should probably just very briefly say what it actually is. Now, Rh stands for rhesus, and the only reason that rhesus comes into the description of this blood type is because it was first discovered, or they were experimenting with, by using rhesus monkeys. It has nothing to do with monkeys, okay? It has nothing to do with simians or simian DNA or anything like that. But Rh itself is simply a coating. It's a kind of a coating that coats the red blood cells. And so when you say that someone is Rh positive, like all animals are in the animal kingdom, it simply means that that individuals have that coating on their blood cells, and they can freely reproduce with other beings on the planet pretty easily without bad consequences. Now, if you have Rh negative blood, like I do, and one of my sons, that means that I don't have that coating on my red blood cells. Now, just as an example, I am O negative my husband is O positive. And so when I was pregnant with my first son, the concern was that if that baby had O positive blood, then literally my blood would perceive my baby as an invader and essentially attack it. So that's what's so, now that is what is so unusual about this phenomena, about some part of our population having a blood system that recognizes all the other blood systems as foreign. So that really is what gives us pause, that this could occur, and it doesn't occur, of course, anywhere else in any of the biological life on the planet. This is a unique phenomena specific to humanoids, and those of us that are carrying the oldest blood type and also have the Rh negative factor cannot 100% of the time reproduce successfully with other people on this planet. So, does that make sense? Was that a good synopsis there? Not being a scientist, I'm just trying to explain it as I will. I just think it's the ancient blood type. I think it's an ancient engram. I think the Anunnaki probably had no Rh factor. I think the Rh factor may come in from other beings who engaged with us. In other words, I don't believe that it was just the Anunnaki who were engaging with human species. I think it's very possible that, we have reptilian parts of our brains. Maybe we even have some reptilian DNA. Who knows? But I think there were, we talk about the 5 fingers of humanity and how diverse we look. I mean, there had to be at least, 5 different types of ET beings to have influenced the way we look, because it doesn't really have to do with where we developed as hominids.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on here to the next question. Michael is asking, you mentioned that you've had an experience. Let's hear about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I hope I won't bore your readers. I think I did talk about this in my last visit, but I'll try to make it pretty brief. But it was quite terrifying for me, and I still haven't put all of the pieces in place, but this is essentially what happened. When I was a young actor, just right out of high school, I was hired to work in a summer stock theater in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and that's where the Mount Rushmore heads are, by the way, for those of you that may not be familiar. So it's a remote area. It's a no-fly zone. It's also sacred ground to the Lakota Sioux, and also one of the number one places for sightings, UFO sightings in the world, the Black Hills of South Dakota. It's a very unique geophysical area. So in the company that year, I met a young lady who I don't want to reveal her identity. Well, she was let's say that she was a performer in some of the resort areas of Nevada, but also she was a very, very gifted psychic. And I referred to her earlier when I mentioned that I had known someone who had worked for the government. Well, this was the young lady. She worked for the government, and she also maintained her performing career. And that summer, she had come to the Black Hills Playhouse just basically to escape, because she was exhausted from her work with the government. The government wanted her to continue on in the program of communicating with the ETs, who she referred they were greys of some sort. She knew that, and she was also being hounded by the greys to continue communicating, because she was, so very good at it. So she was sort of hiding out, and I believed her, because I just believed her, because everything she said, resonated. And that summer, every time that we went on a drive through the Black Hills together, and of course it'd be pitch black, we saw craft right and left. I mean, it was so common to see craft literally following her, keeping an eye on her. It was so common. It just became. I just didn't even question it. It was just, oh, there they go again, and we would see lights moving, and at first it would look like a star was moving, then they'd be closer, and then they'd be following our car, and it was relentless. I even one afternoon, I happened to be across the way from our dorm, our quarters where we were living, and I saw a large sort of a town car, and this would have been, let's see, how old am I? When would this have been? I'm going to say this is 1973, something like that. So this older car, it looked like a big old Chrysler Imperial. It pulled up right outside of the dorm where she was living. And then I saw two individuals get out of the car. And they were wearing, your classic Men in Black get-up. And, of course, I didn't know anything about that at that time. They had on black fedoras. And the one thing that was kind of odd about their dress is their pants were really short. You could see that they were wearing shoes that looked kind of orthopedic or heavy, but they had these little, the pants were really what we used to call high waters, up above the ankle. And I did see them go into her dorm and stay there for a short time and come out. And I later asked her about it, and she just said, well, it was more pressure to maintain, to be in the program. So this same summer, I had a boyfriend, and we were, of course, spending quite a bit of time together, and we were sleeping together, I guess, in his quarters one night. And it had to be very, very late or very early. We'd been asleep for quite a while, but I was awakened by a low vibration, like 10-cycle sound, like a vibration where almost the structure was vibrating, a low sound or vibration. And then the room filled with light. And we're out in the middle of the woods here. We're out in the middle of a state park. There's no lights like that. So the whole room filled with light. And even the atmosphere began to feel kind of viscous, kind of thick. Now, I tried to wake up my boyfriend. I tried everything. I shook him. I yelled at him. He was turned off, which we talked about earlier in the show. He was not waking up, period. Now, the next thing that I remember consciously is I was walking up to the bathhouse. Yes, we had a separate bathhouse. It was really like a campground. I was walking up to the bathhouse. It was dawn. The light was just starting to come up. My nightgown was on backwards, and I had blood running down my leg. And I'm not talking about menstrual blood. This was anomalous blood. So that, of course, was very disturbing, but I didn't seem to analyze it. Now, bear in mind, I'm only 17 years old, but I didn't seem to really understand the high strangeness of what had just occurred. And in fact, I developed a terrible infection, which was anomalous and was treated, and there were later some real gynecological anomalies, which I won't bother to go into at this point. But definitely, I had some type of experience of high strangeness. Now, I have not yet gone to a colleague to try to recover the memory of what occurred, because I really don't want to. I have a pretty good idea of what went on, and I think that that's maybe enough for me. Oh, excuse me. And I would have to say, to my knowledge, that was an isolated experience. Now, I kind of think maybe it was sort of a wrong place, wrong time. Maybe I got on the radar because I was associating with this young lady, or maybe I just don't have memories of my other experiences, and there are other experiences. I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you that there is something in me that has so much compassion for experiencers that it really has to come from someplace deep inside me. And so whether or not I had that experience so that I would later have compassion and do this work, I'm not sure. Whether it was a randomized thing where they just wanted DNA and they took it, not sure. But that's my experience, and it was indeed very strange. And I put it away in my memories and didn't really start thinking about that again until I began doing this kind of work.
At what point, and we hear this all the time, especially with a scenario like yours, which didn't sound very, very comfortable.
No.
At what point do we say, or do we throw around the term free will?
Oh, I think we should be exerting our free will at every possible opportunity. And as I said, if we want the experiences to stop, we have to tell them to stop. And generally they will. Now, it's my belief that the type of beings that, if I was indeed taken, the type of beings involved in that experience, I would have to believe that they were involved in some collusion with the military, because that would have been the situation that my friend was in. This was a collaborative military, U.S. military, and a specific group of gray ETs that were involved together. So, I would have to say that that's the kind of thing that we were dealing with, that we're not really seeing much anymore. I think maybe there might be even a moratorium going on. But I am a great believer in telling them exactly how we feel, and telling them if we want it to stop, if we want to collaborate, if we want more downloads. I think we can communicate very, very directly, and I think that we can do it in real time.
Because the big argument when it comes to free will is that everyone seems to think that for a lot of us contactees, made this contract before we came to Earth, or that our free will is supposed to project onto extraterrestrials who are apparently God-fearing, and it is our choice whether or not they take us or not. But we don't see that happening. So this is where I'm confused by the whole free will comment. I think I get it, but in the long term, the more I think about it and the more I hear stories, I'm not sure that free will plays any role in any of this.
I don't think it plays a role with every species. Let's put it that way. I think there are species that have in the past done exactly what they want without any regard for us. And whether or not we make the plan to come in and be involved and do this kind of work, we have the right to change our plan, right? If it becomes too intense for us, we can change our map, we can change our soul plan. We can agree to things that become too much in the reality. So I am a complete believer in free will, but we have to verbalize it. And by verbalize, I don't mean we have to necessarily say it in an auditory way, but we have to communicate and make our feelings known. And as I said at the beginning of the show, generally speaking, once an individual does that, then the change happens. The agreement is altered. And either the experiences stop, or the person is able to sleep, or they get deeper insights, or they have increased psychic awareness, or, whatever the there can be a new agreement put in place, is what I'm trying to say. So to me, whether or not we agree to these things when we come in, that's a moot point. We may not, but I believe in free will, and I believe that free will is respected among most species, completely respected. I also believe that there are species that have a complete hands-off policy, not unlike Gene Roddenberry's Prime Directive. So we're dealing with a wide variety of beings. So it's very difficult to make one statement, one umbrella statement that encompasses all of the things that are going on.
Very, very in-depth. I think Robert has a very, very interesting question here. And he is asking, Leslie, do you know of any medical conditions that are believed to be spawned from being taken?
Wow. That is, that's something that we're always debating about. Now, there are abductees who tell me, who recall elaborate stories of having, body parts taken out and put back in, and there are certainly women who have recalled basically being used as a as a container for fertilizing fetuses, and then the fetuses are removed and apparently developed in a synthetic way on board the craft. And many of those women have, incredible gynecological problems and may not even be able to conceive children in a normal way due to, scarring, or sometimes when they go to the doctor, the doctor will say it looks like you've had, 25 abortions. So there have been, mechanical things, but as far as illnesses, that would be something that I would like to study and like to get more feedback on to make a really informed statement. Right now, within my practice, within my colleagues' practices, I haven't seen any definitive evidence. However, people who are having these experiences and are being taken, maybe against their will, they're not sleeping, their immune system is going to be affected. So they might be vulnerable to all kinds of things simply because of the stress factor of what they're going through in their lives. It would be hard to separate the incredible role of stress and the human body and perhaps vulnerability to maybe physical illnesses. Now, what I have seen with a number of my clients is when beings have intervened and cured them. So this is something that I see, pretty commonly. Even I'll mention, Wes Roberts has a fascinating story where he was a teenager and he was suffering from pneumonia, which, for people in my age group, that could have been a death sentence years ago. And a being came into the hospital and literally put their hands into his chest, and he was cured. So we do see helping and curing, I think, more, at least in my experience, more than we see a negative predisposition for illness.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to another question here. This one comes from Bill. He is asking, how can we possibly have free will when it is more and more obvious that they can do what they want whenever they want?
Well, we've talked about this a good deal on the show this evening. And again, I would say most of the time this is a question of perception. And I would not necessarily agree with that hypothesis that they can do whatever. Well, they can do probably whatever they want, but I think we are dealing primarily with ethical beings. And, if we weren't, I wouldn't have seen all of this successful communication for the past 10 years where my clients have been able to really verbalize what they want, whether it's stopping or increasing, whatever it is, the communication is real and it's going on. So I don't know if I would make that blanket a statement. I'm sure that they can do whatever they want, but I do think that we are primarily dealing with ethical beings who believe in the sanctity of free will.
It is still one of those difficult topics indeed, because when we look on these subjects on a human level, and that's all we can really do for most of us, it's very difficult to say, hey, I didn't allow that. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Not everybody has, and I'm going to say I'm fortunate here, Lesley, and I'll use myself as an example here. Before I ever knew I got taken, okay, the first day I met an extraterrestrial being, it was 2:00 in the afternoon. I had a lady named Samantha Mowat with me, whom you have to meet. You have to meet.
Yes, I know of her, yes.
Yeah, and, it was 2:00 in the afternoon, bright blue sky, we're in a forest, it's us and them. And they were telepathically communicating through her, saying, hey, we're not here to take you, we're just here to say hello. And in fact, they brought up the fact that I was having an absolute panic attack internally, that they were more concerned about my health than anything like that. So this is where I know me personally, I have my own conundrum about what is up with all of this, because so many of the stories don't make sense to what I have gone through, and I know my stories and my experiences haven't resonated with anybody else who has gone through a tougher time or may not know they're going through that time.
Yeah. Well, the people who are going through the tough time are the ones who need the therapy and the compassion to sort out what's going on. It can be very confused, and also, as I've said, if people have had traumatic childhoods, trauma from their own past can become infused with these memories. This is something that has to be sort of sorted out, I think. I have, as I said, several times, most of the people have positive experiences that come to me, or we get to the positive experiences. But there are people that, there's one client that I have who, tells this story about, doing battle. Like every time that they come to take him, he starts fighting with them and trying to strangle them and engaging in combat. And he and his wife are so now paranoid that they've built some kind of a safe room that they, forgive me, I don't mean to laugh at them. I'm certainly not laughing at them, because this is a high degree of discomfort and paranoia. But they have felt that they had to build this sort of safe room, which is kind of like a big placebo effect, I think. But they feel that when they're in the safe room, that they can't be taken. I don't really believe that's true, but for them, that's how they get through. But every experience that this guy has involves him engaging in some combative way with the beings. So I still am not completely sure what's going on in his case, because it's so kind of anomalous from many of the other people that I work with. He also believes that he's had all his organs taken out and put back in, and he has a whole elaborate scenario, a group of scenarios for things that have occurred. And of course, I listen with a completely open mind, because I think anything is possible. I don't discount what he says, but I think we have yet to get to the kernel of what's really happening. I think his fear level is so high, and indeed he might try to engage with the beings, but I don't think that they allow that kind of physicality to occur in that way. Remember remember Travis Walton in talking about his specific story. When he woke up and realized he was on a craft, he started to try to fight with the smaller grays, and they just left. They didn't engage. They just left the building. They left the room, and then they sent in humanoid beings to try to comfort him. And even though the humanoid beings didn't speak to him, he found them comforting, and then he calmed down. So, this idea of engaging in physical combat, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not sure about that, but it definitely represents a high level of anxiety.
There's a lot of people out there who believe that we have no control over what they make us do, that they can make us think that this is okay. They can make us realize that this is supposed to be happening. Do you believe that, or do you believe that we are still, as people, in control?
I believe that primarily we're involved in a collaborative project, primarily. We may not remember it when we're in our conscious lives, but I think primarily that's what's going on. Now, I do believe that the beings that we interact with, or some of them, are able to show themselves to some people and not to others. In fact, some people are receptive to the experience, and some are not. In fact, in that summer that I was talking about with my own personal experience, I remember at one point we were done, striking a set. Taking a set down, and it was probably about this same time, about 2 a.m. or whatever. And a group of us were standing outside the theater, and a large craft became completely visible. And only about half of us could actually see it, which leads me to believe that maybe there is something special about people having experiences, that we can either perceive these other levels of reality because of psychic ability, or maybe it's even physical. Maybe some of us inherit the ability to see light matter, to see matter that's vibrating at a higher level than dense physical matter. I can't answer that question, but what I can tell you is some people are capable of perceiving these experiences and some people don't.
Gloria is asking, could there be a connection with why so many people suffer from insomnia?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there could be. Usually what that would often represent is that people are afraid to sleep. They're afraid to sleep and be vulnerable. So there could be a connection between a continuing insomnia issue and also and experiences. One of my clients, or actually many of them, have been fearful to sleep. They pretty much all experiencers deal with sleep disorders on some level. And that's because they spend so much time, traveling and doing other things when they're allegedly in their sleep states. They never get enough sleep. Maybe they don't want to be taken and they're afraid to sleep. So there's invariably some kind of sleep connection or lack thereof that exists with experiencers, and also a fear of sleeping. Now, that's not to say that all insomnia is related to experiencers, because it's not. It can definitely deal with our biochemical situation, emotional trauma. There's a whole bucket of things that it could be, but experiencers really seem to share that sleep disorder thing in a big way. Even if the experiences are positive, they're still having disrupted sleep. They still are exhausted in the morning, and they may not even remember what happened, but they feel like they've had no sleep at all. So yes, I would have to answer that question with a big yes.
Well, I can tell you this, that happened to me about 3-4 weeks ago. I was just groggy, and my wife wakes up in the morning. She's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "I think I got taken last night. I don't feel like I've slept a wink." I don't have any remembrance of anything or recollection of being taken, but you just learn to learn the symptoms. And I think it's happened for me enough now where I know personally when it's happening, and I'm sure people out there know when they wake up in the morning.
Yes, I totally agree. And what I would say again to anyone out there who is, having a lot of nighttime experiences and having disrupted sleep or no sleep, is just put yourself in a relaxed state and explain that you need your sleep, and maybe make a deal. Like my colleague Wes Roberts, he has a deal in place where he only travels on the weekends because he needs his sleep during the week. And once he put that agreement in place, that's how it's been. So he has experiences. He gets taken. He travels sometimes physically, sometimes just in his etheric body or psychophysical body. But always there's stuff going on. But now it only happens on the weekends when he doesn't have to function on his day gig.
That is not the first time that I have heard that. I know Samantha Mowat, and I know I bring up her name a lot on this show, but I can't speak highly enough about her. Yes. I know she has rules. For instance, nothing in the bathroom. Don't watch her go to the bathroom. Don't watch her shower. Don't watch her get changed. If her and her husband are making sweet love to Barry White, that's off limits as well. It happens that way, and the weird stuff does happen because they don't care. They don't
understand.
And that's what I mean. They don't understand.
Yeah, they don't really get the way our consciousness works and our physical need to shut down our body for 8 hours. They don't really totally understand that. So, but just if you try to make an agreement, you may be surprised at how successful you are if you are an experiencer who is having these sleep issues.
What's sleep, by the way? What is sleep? I think it's overrated. It is so overrated. And that's what I will say. As I'm looking at my clock and I'm thinking, yes, I might get 6 hours tonight. I may get 6 hours.
Well, I hope there's 6 good hours. Then you'll be okay. You'll be all right.
The other night, on Sunday, because up here in British Columbia, it's starting to get cold for winter, and we have a wood stove, so I've been rushing to get firewood. Going to all the logging piles that the foresters have cut down and just left. I go collect the scraps and take it to my house, but I still got to chop it up. And the other day, I actually went to bed at 8:30. I was so tired. I chopped up the rest of my wood, the final wood that I will chop for 2016, thank God. And I woke up the next day. I was so sore, it hurt. It was one of the most painful things I have had in a long time. And, it's just... It hurt. That's all I'm going to say.
I bet it did. I bet it did. Well, luckily, that's out of the way. You don't have to do that again for a while.
Oh, no. Not until about April when my burnaholic wife decides that I need to go into the forest and get her more wood.
Well, I'm a big burner, too. I tell you, my husband's not too happy with me. But here in the city, we just got a guy named Dave who comes in with a giant truck.
Yes. So yeah, it's always a Dave. It's always
Dave. We've had 3 different guys doing the wood, and they're all named Dave.
It happens. It happens. That's just the way it is sometimes. We're down to our last couple of minutes here. This 3 hours, my. I know, it flew by. I would love it if you took a minute here to explain how people can get in touch with you if they've had an experience.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for listening and for your insightful questions. And it was just so much fun for me. And if you'd like to reach me, you can always get me by email at Lesley, Lesley, at lightworkhypnosis.com. That's my email. And you can certainly always call my office number, which is 416-486 6742, and I will ring you back, and I would love to hear from each and every one of you. And if I didn't answer your question as thoroughly or as in depth as you would like, please get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to just chat with you further. That's what gives me a lot of joy. So please do get in touch, and thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I feel very honored.
Leslie, I'm going to get you to hold on for a minute here or two, because I got to wrap this thing up.
Okay.
So you hold on. If you're listening on the Spaced Out Radio side, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL from Guns N' Roses, formerly, now of Art of Anarchy is his new band. Well, he takes us in and out of every show. Bumblefoot is the official music of this show. So thank you so much, Mr. B, for rocking us in and out every night of the week. Remember, if you want to check out this show or others, you can check it out on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, on TuneIn or on iTunes. Download it for free. Tomorrow night on the show, we have Corey Rowe from Loose Change. We're getting into 9/11 tomorrow night. Get ready to get your tinfoil hats on, because we are going all conspiracy tomorrow. Have a good one. We'll talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. I am out. SpaceOutRadio.com is our website. Do us a favor. We're growing this because of you. Tell a friend. That's all we ask. Tell one friend. Thank you. Good night.